Okay, so let's just touch on this real quick. So you're wearing the Central Park Five or the Exonerated Five, like they like to be called
Exactly.
now.
The dude takes out a full page in the post and damn near wanted these young brothers murdered.
Well, yeah, he called for the death penalty
Yeah.
for these guys,
Right.
and we went into this whole story. They really had nothing to do with it, and ultimately, it was proven that they had nothing to do with it.
Yeah.
They were all just good kids.
Just before trial, in an effort to locate and interview additional witnesses, detectives asked Corey Jackson, a 15-year-old friend of Kerry Wise, to come into the precinct to be interviewed. Jackson came into the 25th precinct with his 27-year-old sister, Melody. During this interview, Melody Jackson made an unsolicited statement concerning a conversation she had with Kerry sometime after the pretrial hearing. She explained that she was at her sister's house when the phone rang. She answered the phone, and it was Wise calling from Rikers Island. She said hello, and then said to him that she couldn't believe that they did that. Wise repeatedly stated that he didn't rape anyone, finally saying that he, quote, only held her legs down while Kevin had sex with her. Jackson seemingly thought her information would be helpful to Wise. She was subpoenaed by the district attorney's office to testify at trial and repeated what she had said. Melody Jackson's interview in 2002 reconfirmed her testimony. I just comment, we currently have many allegations of rape gathered under the hashtag #MeToo movement. Very few of the allegations of rape have even as much evidence as we've just presented here with this one phone call. That would be enough evidence to convict someone, not just in the court of public opinion, but in a court of law. Out of the approximately 40 teenagers who entered Central Park that night, 37 were interviewed. 10 were arrested and ultimately convicted of charges resulting from their activities. 5 of these 10, the defendants, were charged with the assault and rape of the female jogger, the assault of John Laughlin, the assault on David Lewis, and a riot charge. All but Kerry Wise were convicted of assault, riot, robbery, and rape. Kerry Wise was convicted of assault, riot, and sexual abuse. Perhaps the most politically significant criminal trial in the year 2019 concerns a crime that was committed decades ago in 1989. The case of the Central Park Five is being reopened and re-examined, not in any court of law, but by the public here on the internet. The members of the mainstream press offer commentary, but that commentary seems to be very rarely informed by the one source that this entire video is based on, the one and only source you need to consult if you want to know the true history of what happened, not only when the crime was committed, but in the investigation that followed after, and the very strange legal battles that ensued after that. This one source, the Armstrong Report. At the end of this video, I hope you will either be inspired to go and read it for yourself, or at least you will be inspired to demand of the people who provide you with information, whether on the radio, on the internet, or in newsprint. Why is it that they never paid due attention to the facts established by the Armstrong Report? In the first major event, the assault on Antonia Diaz, a total of 23 people were named as participants or as being present. All 5 defendants were implicated by accomplices and 2 admitted participation. The second major event was harassment of a couple on a tandem bike. A total of 13 people were named participants or as being present. 4 of the defendants were implicated by accomplices and admitted participation. I have to comment at this point. If you want to imagine that the police carefully constructed the narrative of what happened and fed this information to the defendants, that they coerced the defendants to give the information that would make this story work, the timeline of the police interviewing so many different people, approximately 30 different people, and getting 30 different stories from different perspectives about what happened, about a series of disorganized crimes, all transpiring in the same night. That's a conspiracy theory that is very, very difficult to make match with this mess of facts. And this is a situation where it was a group of undisciplined teenagers, pretty much each of whom was snitching on the others while trying to minimize their own guilt or responsibility. Some being more honest than others, and over the course of years, the authorities had to figure out who was being more honest and who was being less so, partly through the comparison of those stories. But this is not a situation where the police could easily contrive one story to then feed to a group of 30 different people. The third major event was crossing the 96th Street transverse road to the reservoir. A total of 17 people were identified as having gone south toward the reservoir. All 5 defendants were implicated by accomplices and admitted going. The fourth major event was the assault on jogger David Lewis. A total of 11 people were identified as participants or as being present. 4 of the defendants were implicated by accomplices, and 1 had admitted participation. The fifth major event was the assault on jogger John Laughlin, who was very badly beaten. A total of 19 people were identified as participants or as being present. All 5 defendants were implicated by accomplices, and 3 admitted participation. Whatever conclusions may be reached regarding Matias Reyes's claims that he raped the female jogger alone, emphasis on the word alone, there seems to be no reason to believe that the defendants were innocent of the other crimes for which they were convicted, crimes committed on the same day. Again, if you in the audience want to believe that some of the confessions were false to some extent, even that has to be seen in this context of having so many serious charges rolled up in a ball. In terms of human psychology and common legal practice, when people do confess to crimes they didn't commit, one context that happens in is when they've committed many other crimes and are already facing many years in prison, and those charges are all rolled up in a ball, so to speak. However, I think if anyone reads the full report, I think it's very, very difficult to convince yourself that there's any possibility that any of the Central Park 5 are innocent in any meaningful sense of the term innocent. Before we get into the details, there are 2 important clarifications to set down. Number 1, wrongly convicted does not mean innocent, especially not when police misconduct is involved. The more the police are guilty of misconduct, the more irrelevant it is to the guilt or innocence of the people on trial that the case is thrown out of court, or that the conclusions of the trial were later invalidated. So if you believe the police did something wrong in, for example, interrogating the witnesses, interrogating the suspects, that in itself actually does not exonerate the suspects in any way. It's very easy for people to lose sight of that fact. If the interrogations were carried out improperly, that still doesn't mean the people being accused were innocent. Number 2, one politically motivated myth may be replaced by another equally misleading politically motivated mythology. Even if you believe that someone like Donald Trump is untrustworthy, that does not make Whoopi Goldberg trustworthy. The story that Whoopi Goldberg is telling, which is simply DNA evidence doesn't lie, therefore these 5 men are completely innocent, therefore Donald Trump is wrong and evil and bad and terrible. Do you think that Whoopi Goldberg has done the little bit of reading, the 40 pages of reading that I did in preparing this video? Do you think that Whoopi Goldberg has read the Armstrong Report? I don't. I also don't believe that Donald Trump has read the Armstrong Report. Donald Trump may be wrong about many, many things. If Donald Trump is right about this, I guess it's just his dumb luck, or he asked the opinion of some lawyer in New York City who knows more than he does. It's terrifying to me that the small number of people I trust in the mainstream media, people whose opinions I care about, like DJ Vlad here, have completely jumped on the bandwagon of trying to present the Central Park Five as heroes without doing the little bit of fact-checking that I've done in preparing this YouTube video to present to you now. Some of the defendants have repeated their admissions of guilt. Santana testified at a parole hearing in 1994. He admitted that he and his friends planned to go to the park that night to rob and assault people. He stated that about 7 or 8 friends devised the plan. They were prepared to attack whoever they encountered that night in the park. Santana reiterated that they had let a couple, go because the man was with his girlfriend. Santana also admitted to beating a man. He denied only the rape. When McRae went before the parole board in November 1994, he admitted all of his crimes except for the rape of the female jogger. 2 of the defendants, Raymond Santana and Kevin Richardson, during interviews conducted by detectives in 2002, admitted their participation in the assaults that did not involve the jogger.
When you imply they must have done something anyway, you're saying, I don't care that they didn't do it. So if you don't care they didn't do it, why? Why? If it was his kids, if it was Ivanka and Don Jr., do you think he would say, I don't care that they didn't do it? I don't care, both sides, there's 2 sides to this, there's 2 sides to it. No, of course not. He views certain people as above the law, and it doesn't matter what they do, and they can get away with anything. Other people, they're under the law. It doesn't matter if they did it or didn't do it. We're gonna punish them based on my stereotypes of them.
There is a 2-tier justice system. We do have a problem with targeting innocent people of color and putting them behind bars when they have not committed a crime. And what that does is not only ruin their lives, but it also allows the real culprit to go out there and commit more crimes, more rape, more murder, and that is certainly what happened in this case.
That is absolutely what happened in this case, and we talked about it earlier this week. That is exactly what happened in this case. There's a young woman and 2 young men who don't have their mother anymore because the real Central Park attacker went on to kill their mother because he was a serial rapist whose DNA was at the crime scene. And in not continuing to look for who actually did it, and from all accounts, except for Fairstein's, all of the evidence led to 1 attacker, not 5.
Matias Reyes is the man who many years after the crime was committed confessed to his involvement, and DNA evidence confirmed that he was one of the people who raped this woman, the jogger in the park. However, the DNA evidence does not confirm that nobody else raped her. The DNA evidence does not indicate that nobody else was guilty of the crimes that they in fact confessed to, and that again, a complex network of about 30 witnesses all identified and implicated different people involved at different stages of this sequence of crimes, sequence of assaults involving 1 rape, all transpiring on the same night, all with multiple witnesses, all with multiple participants. I just note, because it's not the focus of this video, the testimony of Matias Reyes, which is all covered in the same report, it's deeply incoherent. In some places, it's just incorrect. In other places, it's either implausible or actually impossible. Matias Reyes's testimony is so unreliable, it's so bad, that if we didn't have the DNA evidence proving that he was one of the rapists, it wouldn't hold up in court. Even his confession wouldn't hold up in court. So there's a great deal that's self-evidently wrong with the testimony provided by Matias Reyes, and several experts testify that he is insane, a psychopath. He's also a murderer and rapist. There are many, many reasons to regard what he says as highly dubious, but the DNA proves that he was ultimately one of the men at the scene of the crime. In the afternoon of April 20th, 1989, prior to being arrested, Kerry Wise made admissions to 2 acquaintances, Ronald Williams and Shabazz Head. They approached Wise at 110th Street and 5th Avenue, and Wise told them to get away from him because the police were after him. Williams and Head walked away. A short time later, they encountered him again and asked why the police were after him. Wise replied, "You heard about that woman that was beat up and raped in the park last night? That was us." When Kevin Richardson was interrogated by Detective Gonzalez, he was asked to explain the scratches on his face. At first, Richardson said it was an injury he received when he fell. Following more questioning, Richardson stated that he got the scratches from the arresting officer. When told of the possibility that the officer would be asked to corroborate the story, Richardson admitted that he received the scratches from the female jogger while trying to stop the others from attacking her. In a later statement to a detective, Kevin Richardson explained that he lied about he received the scratch on his face. Richardson said he received it when he tried to take the female jogger off of the road. The evidence presented in court also included, among other things, a blood stain on Raymond Santana's sneaker, individual blood stains on Yusuf Salam's jacket and Stephen Lopez's underwear, and semen stains on the underwear of Antron McCrae and Kevin Richardson and the sweatshirt of Raymond Santana. The Ryan affirmation makes no reference to the blood or semen evidence. This evidence was by no means dispositive at trial. The word dispositive here means it doesn't make it an open and shut case. It doesn't prove the case at trial. This evidence was by no means dispositive at trial, but the fact that it exists is important. For instance, it contradicts various reports that no blood was found on any of the defendants. In sum, the new test results establish that Matias Reyes is the previously unknown source of the semen found on the female jogger and her clothing. They do not prove that the other defendants, known as the Central Park Five, could not have participated in the attack. Coming to the conclusion, we adopt the view that the most likely scenario for the events of April 19th, 1989 was that the defendants came upon the jogger and subjected her to the same kind of attack, albeit with sexual overtones, that they inflicted upon other victims in the park that night. Perhaps attracted to the scene by the jogger's scream, Reyes either joined in the attack as it was ending or waited until the defendants had moved on to their next victims before descending upon her himself, raping her, and inflicting upon her the brutal injuries that almost caused her death. Concerning the crimes other than the rape of the female jogger, two of the defendants reaffirmed their guilt for these crimes at parole hearings, and one of these, together with a third, did so in 2002 after Reyes came forward to make his confession. Moreover, four other individuals who had pleaded guilty to the assaults implicated the defendants in these crimes in their interrogations or recorded statements. So I ask you first and foremost, the Armstrong report, who do you think read it? Not Donald Trump, not Ava DuVernay, not Whoopi Goldberg. And then if I ask who wrote it, well, this is lawyer Michael F. Armstrong, and this is former New York police officer Jules Martin. Am I, for my part, a little bit biased against Ava DuVernay? Yes, I am, but not just because she happens to be wrong about many of the facts and ethical claims that she's made in her latest hit movie concerning the Central Park Five. I'm actually biased against her just because she lacks precisely the sort of background that people like Michael Armstrong and Jules Martin have in putting together their meticulously researched report. Ultimately, I am biased against Ava DuVernay precisely because she is a double BA major in English Literature and African American Studies from UCLA. I genuinely do not think she has the education or experience to deal with the type of complex, dense, and conflicting information that you need to analyze and put together in a responsible way to understand what happened on the night in 1989 when in Central Park numerous people were assaulted, beaten, and one woman was brutally raped. Finally, the Armstrong report. Why did people ignore it? I think that the value of the report is so obvious. The evidence presented by it is so overwhelming, it's so conclusive, that it's being ignored today simply because it had the misfortune to be published way back in January of 2003. It simply came out at a time when the public was not paying attention, and today, when they are paying attention, the message offered by the report is one that everyone seems to want to sweep under the rug. If you want to know the full story, again, this video has just one source. You can Google around, you can read it for yourself.